And I think, too, I don't think anybody in the community was saying, get out. I don't even think the administrators were saying necessarily, in those terms, get out, we don't appreciate you. But I know that's how it felt to my dad.
Yeah.
And it would have to. He's human, right? And I know that's how Kevin and I felt. We're like, wait, this is our jam. Like, what are we doing here? Are you ready, big dog?
I'm ready.
Did I even tell you what we're doing?
No.
Welcome to Kansas QB, a podcast about growing up in rural Kansas, hosted by two former high school quarterbacks. And now, here are your manly hosts, Steve Juhl and Tyler Martin.
Yeehaw!
Ride 'em, cowboy!
Growing up in the cornfields of the Sunflower State, we were inseparable. Brothers from different mothers who also happen to be sisters. Our moms, not us. Decades later, he's in Iowa, I'm in Missouri, but we'll always have Kansas, and we'll always be the QB. Howdy, folks, and welcome to the show. I'm Steve, he's Tyler, and today's episode is entitled The Breakup, Part 1. Hey, Tyler, you're back! I did an episode without you for the first time since it started, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of felt like you cheated on me a little bit. I don't know. I will say this: it was necessary. We were being so tardy with getting these out. Things weren't gelling schedule wise, but I mean, I was less concerned when I listened back to it after the opening of the show, and after Matt botched that, I'm like, yeah, this is fine. I'll be okay.
Yeah, obviously we weren't looking to replace you, but I think Matt did a great job. And who knows if it was on purpose or if it was accidental? Who knows? But I think he put both of our minds at ease right there from the get-go when he totally messed up your very first line.
He's pretty good at reading between the lines and making things cohesive. So, Matt, by the way, thank you, dude, for filling in and helping us out when we needed you. Hopefully it's not a regular occurrence, but
he did do a great job. He did do a great job.
It was good. And I'll say this. So when I was listening to you guys, and I knew what was coming down the road because I read the script. But when I listened to you guys, I was glad it was Matt talking about that stuff and not me.
Well, that's kind of why I picked that one, because I that was not on the list, and I added it in because what's something that could be connected to our childhood that Tyler probably would rather not talk about, that, I don't know, I might, and that Matt would know something about. I was like, that's it. You should know this too, Tyler, okay? I don't know, that his bosses will ever watch this show. I called him a half hour before I would have had to record, because I'm like, we're not going to get anything recorded before Friday. And I was feeling bad because, we didn't do a subscriber-only podcast last week. And I was so in order to get to that, we got to record 2 other ones first. So we got to get 3 in. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to call Matt. I just texted him and said, hey, any chance you're not doing anything right now? He's like, well, I'm designing stadium seats. And I was like, any chance you could take a 40-minute break? He's like, yeah, sure. So that was a half hour before the show. And then that half hour spent with me coming up with the script. Like, he did all of that with not really knowing what was happening. So well done, Matt. Well done. I guess we should applaud for him. Of course, I'm going to chuck the applause. Yep, it's that good. Yep, there you go. So thanks to Matt. Moving on, though, Tyler. You and I have always been somewhat competitive. Would you agree?
We have. Absolutely.
Okay. And at times, even competitive with one another.
Very much so. I would say you and I have been competitive with each other from... third grade, second grade.
I would say kindergarten. You may not recall this, but we ran the mile in kindergarten. And as we came around the last lap, and maybe it wasn't kindergarten, maybe it was first grade, came around the last corner, I was in first. And according to your father, and I do remember this also, so your dad didn't make this up, I ran down the last corner and then the last straightaway with my arms like this, moving in front of you to make sure that I beat you in the mile. So, yeah, for a long time. Well, Tyler, in fact, in 2016, which is more recent than that, kindergarten mile, we competed with each other in the Hot Body Challenge. Do you remember this?
I do remember this. And if people look closely at the logo of this show, we are wearing the tank tops that you got for us to commemorate that. It was right when we were buying the house that we're in now, and the pool was out there, and the thing was, hey, we're going to end on whatever, the 4th of July or the party or whatever. Hot body contest, sun's out, guns out.
Yeah, and we had our whole family involved, right? All the Collier side was in, and then a couple from Steph's side. And we had this big competition. You and I obviously were the front runners for it. There were some other people that were, up there with us, but they had a little less strenuous, workout and diet routine. But it was going to culminate in a flex off between you and I at your place. Yeah. And so I came down there and we took that picture and we ended up using it for the logo. So if you ever guys watch this show and you're like, Steve and Tyler, I mean, they're not like old and fat, but they don't look quite like they do in the logo. It's because we took that at what would be our post-athletic peak, I would say. Would you say?
Without question. This is kind of like we're riding the Dow Jones right now. Like that was just I don't even know if you want to buy the dip right now. Like this upswing is temporary.
That's right.
I'm hoping not though.
Yeah. So we're doing it again. We're doing it again, Tyler. It's been 7 years. We started it this past week. We actually started 2 weeks ago, but since you didn't get on it until later, I went ahead. I'd lost 4 pounds. I went ahead and put them back on at the end of last week just for you. So that we can start at the same. Well, I appreciated the opportunity to eat a lot the last 3 days, and sure enough, I had lost 0.2 of a pound. So I was like, okay, great. Well, my wife is also in on it. We invited, Steph, and whatnot to join, and Bethany got on there, and there's actually trophies. I didn't know this. Each week there's a trophy for who lost or hit their targets. So right now she is up 1-0 on us. So let that one sit in your brain place for a little bit.
I got to start logging some stuff then, I guess.
Yeah, you only do it every Tuesday. So every Tuesday you weigh in, because that's kind of a bummer for me because I have different days of the week that I'm more likely to be at a lower weight. But it doesn't matter. We have to weigh in Tuesday, and that is the day each week. And so, anyway. So we're doing that. And obviously, I think by June 15th, we're going to look so awesome that if we wanted to, we could take another logo picture.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. No, actually, this is good. I brought up that it's been 7 years to some colleagues as they have noticed that my exercise and diet routine have changed. Yeah. And said, it's been a little while. We're doing it again. And I plan on coming out on top. I mean,
we'll see. We'll see.
See that. Yeah, we will.
We'll see. Broken News is brought to you today by our friend Matt, whom you saw on yesterday's podcast, Mike Hubble, Carmen of Midway, my man Jonah, Mark and Nancy, Darren Football, and Car Guy Dave. To our Patreon supporters, I must apologize again for no subscriber episode last week. We're making up for it this week by making the Breakup Part 2 our subscriber-only episode. We are going to record it right after we get done recording this one, and we will be talking about how life went at our respective schools after we broke up. So stay tuned for that. For the rest of you out there, if you'd like to be a friend of the show, head on over to www.patreon.com/KansasQB. And of course, we would love for you to subscribe to the Juhl Media LLC YouTube channel, as well as download the show on your favorite podcasting platform.
Broken news.
As we like to say, if it ain't broken, it ain't news. Breaking news is for tryhards, and we no longer have the stamina for that kind of effort. So we take stories that have already been broken and share them with the folks at home. Have you heard about this, Tyler? According to this article published on social media, the site LinkedIn, industrial arts programs have been slowly disappearing from schools since the 50s.
Yes, aware of that. I didn't get a chance to read the article, but that is something that even not just industrial arts. There used to be a class at the school, maybe it was industrial arts related, that was called home improvement. Do you remember that class? Or I
remember home ec.
Or no, home maintenance. Like it was
home maintenance. Yes, home maintenance was what it was called.
Home maintenance, where they would go around the school and fix things. Like basically learn
basic
how to
maintenance. You're right. Small gas engines.
Learn how to be a dad. Fix stuff that is broken.
Yeah, automotive, oil changing. There was some woodwork. There was some metal work. A little bit of everything in these courses, right? Well, Tyler, according to the article, many of these industrial arts programs have been replaced by STEM courses, which is usually more sciencey and mathy, while other districts like Midway and Doniphan West go the ag route, though some schools have made the decision to save the money and not replace the shop class with anything, except maybe a new van.
Still too soon, Steve.
Still too soon. All right. Well, so this article, and I meant to write several paragraphs here, and I was going to read to you, and of course I forgot. But anyway, the article was written by an assistant principal who is basically just making the case for shop programs and how because shop is kind of going away, that you're not getting those basic home skills and life skills that, and again, not just for dudes, right? I mean, we're in the age you're a lady, you want to change the oil and be the person that fixes the house. Great, go for it. That's awesome. Now, not dudes nor ladies, have that opportunity in a lot of schools because they don't get the opportunity to learn those skills if they don't have a dad that's already teaching it to them.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And now, if you're going to learn those skills, you have to do something really, really wrong and learn them in jail.
Yeah. Learn them in jail. Well, and here's my other thought, Tyler, is learn them in jail, or, which, I'm trying to figure out exactly what the connection is there. I've never been to jail. You actually worked at a correctional facility once upon a time, so you would know. You would know. Mm-hmm. I was thinking, though, maybe losing shop class isn't that bad because YouTube. I mean, right? YouTube.
Well, here, everything's kind of cyclical now with that. So people that used to want to go into those vocational arts programs as a career, be it air conditioning, woodworking, welding, anything like that, electrician, plumber, you used to be able to learn most of that, or I shouldn't say most of it, but you'd get your introductory at the high school in that shop class, and it kind of pointed you that way, and you had an opportunity then as a young, I wouldn't even say entrepreneur, but just as a worker, get into the workforce doing that. Now they don't do that. Yeah, but you could also, you learn how to fix your own stuff. Now you don't know how to fix your own stuff, and you also don't get that introductory to go into that stuff. So let's just pay more for somebody that we have to pay to go to college to learn it. Maybe I'm completely off base on that, but it just seems kind of, you're chasing your tail.
Tyler, anytime you were off base, that was usually a good thing for our team because you're so fast, you're probably stealing a base.
The things we remember.
We're getting older. We've already forgotten more than we ever knew. But some memories still cling to our brain parts, like my eyes to my father when he taught us an exploratory shop class in our 7th grade year because only an idiot screws around while my dad is teaching. We've come up with a list, Tyler. And did you know, Tyler, that for the last like 15 episodes, at some point I had deleted the part where I say, we've come up with a list, and we go straight to, this list includes memories. You go back and listen to like the last 10 or 15 episodes. It makes absolutely no sense. Oh. I say something and I say, this list, and everyone's like, well, what list? Have they never heard the show before? But we're just gonna go with it. We've come up with a list. This list includes memories from our time growing up in Kansas. Let's see just how well we can remember. In the Broken News segment, we learned that shop programs have been disappearing from public schools for years. Can you think of any shop programs that were eliminated at any point that would have had a direct bearing on our relationship?
I would, if I could just name one, it would be the cancellation of the shop class at Midway-Denton.
That one, yes. So to kind of set the stage, now what we're trying, okay, so just some ground rules here. What we're not here to do is pick on anybody. So this is going to be a tough one for Tyler to be political, but I believe in you. I believe in you.
I will do my best. We're older now. I'm still upset about a lot more than the sports aspect of it. Trust me. There was a while there, and it never, Steve, that was never the only thing. But there was a long time where I thought that it was hurting the school for my benefit. Now I'm upset still to this day for other reasons, but we're not going there. Okay?
No, we're not going there. We're not angry. We're fine. Everything turned out really, really good. And that's how this story is going to end. It ended up being, even though it's sad, and anybody that's been with the show probably is like, wait, they split up at some point? That has to be a bad thing. The reality is, in the end, there were some very positive things that came out of this.
Yes, and we'll talk, and we'll get to that at the end. But at the end of the day, it was at the time it wasn't great, and I was upset. So let's just jump in.
As was I. Okay. So just a little background. So my dad came, as we've mentioned many times on this show, my dad came to Midway-Denton High School to coach football and be the shop teacher in 1977. He left for a time to do Midway Products, which, by the way, come back for the episode on Monday or Tuesday, depending on what we have time to do. That's when we're doing our Midway Products episode. We're going to talk about...
Teaser. I'm excited about that one.
Right. So he did that for, 4 or 5 years and then eventually came back. My dad had been the head coach, won some state championships. Your dad took over, won more state championships. I think his first 3 years after Dad left, he was undefeated. And then Dad comes back, assists your dad, and together they have some more success. They don't win any state championships, but they get close. You and I grow up kind of in that environment. Dad's the shop teacher. He was continuing to be the shop teacher through my freshman year. And then in freshman year, the program was eliminated. We go to St. Joseph Christian School, and that's kind of where the thing we're talking about today. Because there was a moment, and I've mentioned this one other time during the podcast. So if you're up on season 1, you've heard this before. But there was a point, and I don't know if you remember this, where it was at my house. We had decided we were leaving, and we're going to have some more background on that here in just a second. But we decided we were leaving, and we were walking from my house up to Brandon's house. And we were walking down the street that goes down the hill to get to, the road that then goes back up the hill. And you said to me, well, this really stinks. And then you said, but on the bright side, you're going to have a team that you're going to get to run, and you can make of that what you want. And you're kind of trying to make me feel good. I was like, I don't really want to run my own team. And obviously I didn't. I was one of many people who played on the various teams that I played on at St. Joe Christian. But I had no problem being a cog in a well-oiled machine. I didn't necessarily get too excited about the idea of, being one or two of, people coming in to save a program. As it turned out, I wasn't, and it didn't have to be that way. But you were trying to cheer me up. But, that was kind of a moment where we kind of we diverged, and we didn't spend time every day together at school anymore. And that was kind of sad.
It really was. And as I remember it, I was trying to cheer myself up just as much as I was trying to cheer you up. So for people that, again, are tuning in late to this, Steve and I grew up like brothers in the sense that our moms did everything together. They were sisters. Becky and Kevin and I and you, we just did everything together. And it was hard for me when you guys left, with us being in the same class in a tiny school where not only were we together at school, but after school. And then not only were we together during the week, but on weekends. And then not only were we together during the school year, but in the summer when we go to grandma's house or Grammy's house. Like it was, when I thought of doing stuff, you were always part of what we did. And Becky and Kevin, not like they were older, but it was always kind of like the older kids and the younger kids. So when you guys made that decision to go, I remember being like, well, what am I going to do at school? Like, what am I going to do after school? What am I going to do on the week? And you thought that stuff wouldn't change, and it had to, a little bit. But yeah, I remember you and Kevin being so much more mature about the situation, whether or not you felt that way, than a lot of us that, and not saying that every reason we wanted you to stay was purely selfish, but a lot of us were didn't handle it nearly as graciously as you guys did. And what I'm talking about now is something that we're trying to skirt around, kind of the pushback to the reasons for this.
Yeah. So and so when we left, kind of like you said, it's like, well, things aren't going to change that much. We still only live 3 miles apart. We can drive to your house still on our bikes. And at that time, we were just a year or two away from you're away from driving vehicles, and I could drive there in time. But it is interesting how it did fundamentally change. We did not hang out nearly as much after that, and part of it's because we're driving a half hour. We didn't leave Bendina. We're driving a half hour to get to school. And then one thing about St. Joe Christian, actually one thing I appreciate about Midway is, being at St. Joe Christian, one of the things I've discovered as a teacher is we're a lot more rigorous than the St. Joe School District. And we give homework, and not everybody's used to that nowadays in public school. What I appreciate about Midway is it was very similar and prepared me very well for St. Joe Christian. Mr. Leatherman in math did a great job. Miss Bottom in math did a great job. I felt like for all those folks, when I got to St. Joe Christian, I was up to speed. Now, there was more homework. The concepts I knew, but there was more homework. So I would get home after a practice, and it would already be 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, somewhere in there. And then I would have 2 hours of homework, just private school, math homework and other things. And so I would be doing that until 9 o'clock, and then I'd be putting on my acne medication and getting into bed like this with all my skin super dry, and would fall asleep. I wouldn't see you. And then you're on a different teams than me, so we didn't have practice time together, and we still saw each other. But it really was. It was 1 second. I have two brothers, or let's see, at that point it was three brothers because Brian was born. Yeah. I had three brothers, and then all of a sudden I was really back down to two. So we did definitely have a little bit of a split. And the question is, Tyler, why? Why did we split? Because when we're talking about, it's like, they just decided to go to a different school. It wasn't that simple, Tyler. And I think in order to understand the story, you have to kind of go back. The first time that Dad became aware of St. Joseph Christian School was in, it would have been, 1997, 98? It had been 98 at the track meet, where St. Joseph Christian School came to the Midway-Denton track meet, which Dad always ran the pole vault at that meet. And my mom, for a lot of years, did the announcing. I don't know if she was at that point. But obviously she wasn't at that point. But towards the end, I don't remember if she did or not. But I remember when we were younger, she did. But Dad would run the pole vault. I remember being out there, and we said, Dad was talking to this guy with his dark hair, who is my boss and has been for 16 years, a wonderful man, Danny Magner. Danny was the track coach and athletic director, and he showed up with, I think, one athlete, maybe two athletes, Trevor Gatch and Trish Edwards, I think, were the two athletes that showed up from St. Joe Christian. And Dad was like, wait, there's a Christian school in St. Joe? And started chatting, and, Danny was kind of, which to this day, Danny and my dad are really close. He was telling about this Christian school. So Dad was feeling kind of a tug on his heart that, maybe I need to be doing something for the kingdom. What I love about Midway is it was perfectly okay to talk about, God at Midway. It was a lot of Catholic families, some Christian families, and even the ones who weren't were like, grew up in, a kind of an environment where it was okay to talk about God. Now that's probably changed over time. But it wasn't like he had to go somewhere else to do ministry, but he kind of felt like, well, I can maybe help out this Christian school. He thought about it, but then he thought, I love it here. I'm respected here. My kids have great classes. My kids love it here. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. So he decided not to go, not even consider it. And it was later that year when he discovered that his industrial arts program was going to be cut. And he talks about how, I've heard him talk before about how when they decided to go to 11-man or 8-man football from 11-man, that there was a conversation. Like they were going to do it anyway, but they said, hey, what do you think? And he's like, I don't want to do it. Like, well, I think we're going to have to do it for these reasons. He doesn't feel like he really had that conversation about the end of the industrial arts program. So it was a bit of a surprise. And so the way my dad took it, and there might have been an avenue where he could have done something else, we could have stayed, or he could have gone and done something else and left us at Midway. But he really took that as a sign that God wanted him at St. Joe Christian, and he said no, kind of like a Jonah moment, where it's like, okay, you can either go on your own or I can force you there. And so that's kind of how, so that kind of helps explain, I think, why all of a sudden we were there 1 minute and the next second we were all gone and like, well, and kind of threw ourselves into St. Joe Christian because I think Dad really thought that's where God wanted him.
No, and now in the age of open enrollment and people, and people moving to different districts, it's a lot more common. Back then, especially in rural Kansas, with a teacher, with kids that are not only members, but dudes and going to be dudes, it was just kind of like, whoa, what? Whoa,
Yeah.
why are we doing this? And also, in a community based on doing things agriculturally, blue collar, working with your hands, we're getting rid of what program? The one that prepares them for, and this is the part where we're gonna
Yeah, well, and then again,
skip, move on.
we also we're older now. I've been in education for a while,
Yeah.
and sometimes I've had to make decisions. Everybody's like,
yes,
"What?" And
absolutely.
obviously, the budget's
Absolutely.
a reality. And at a small school,
100%.
I mean, we were supporting a shop program and a home ec program, and both of them were full fledged. Like, Dad had wood and metal, and he kind of begged, borrowed, and stole to get a lot of his materials. But he had tools, like big power tools. Home ec program had all the baking stuff and sewing stuff. So that's expensive. And so you can kind of understand that. But I will say, when it happened, there was like a moment of shock. Like, Kevin and I were like, wait, what? Like, we didn't want to go anywhere. Like, we had always planned on going to Midway and graduating from Midway. And it was like, well, we don't want to go anywhere. And, Dad really didn't either. And it's like, suddenly, like, we feel like, well, we're not welcome here anymore. And that's kind of how Dad felt. He kind of felt like, I think, and I'm speaking for him, and maybe I shouldn't, but I think he kind of felt like, I think I built up enough goodwill in this community that, maybe. And I think, too, I don't think anybody in the community was saying, get out. I don't even think the administrators were saying necessarily, in those terms, get out, we don't appreciate you. But I know that's how it felt. To my dad, and I mean, it would have to. He's human, right? And I know that's how Kevin and I felt. We're like, wait, this is our jam. Like, what are we doing here? Yeah. But anyway,
you're right. We're older. We're more mature. We should treat it as such. I still go back. At the time, it felt like there were avenues where it could have been avoided to cut the program. Now, looking back on it, what did I know? I was a 15-year-old kid.
Right.
I didn't know the budget. I didn't know that stuff. Yeah. It just felt like there was enough people in the community that, hey, if this many people in our community say this happens. And then, nope, this is what we're going to do.
Well, and that was one interesting part of the story, and that I talked to him recently about this, and he'd completely forgotten about this. But I remember a board meeting, and I had text Matt, because like, hey, do you remember anything about this? Because I have what I remember. You have what you remember. And I thought, well, maybe there's someone else that might remember something else from this. There was a board meeting that everyone showed up to in the library. I remember being there, and I don't think Dad was there. I think we rode there with you guys. And I was just text Matt. I was like, do you remember when the shop program was cut in '99? What do you remember about that? He's like, well, I remember the board meeting where I gave a speech. I was like, what? Our friend Matt got up and gave a speech, and he said, basically, I'm an artist, which he is, and we don't have an art program. And so shop, because he took shop his freshman year, he said shop was kind of a creative.
And the CAD stuff that your dad was starting with, we did some drawing and some architectural stuff.
So our friend Matt gave a speech. I remember Casey Walsh. I don't know why I remember him particularly. Like, he was kind of leading the charge at one point. At least that's how I saw it as a freshman. And I remember like a bunch of people there. And I remember just kind of looking around and be like, okay, like no one's trying to kick us out. Like, people like my dad, because, my dad probably could have been a serial killer and I would have supported him because, he was my dad, and he wasn't a serial killer. He was actually a great guy. But I was looking around, and it made me really feel loved by the community that there was a lot of people are saying, well, we don't understand the budget or what needs to happen here necessarily, but hey, we're at the school board meeting to support Mark Juhl and his family. And so I remember feeling really good about that. Do you have any, did you?
That was, I remember being there and kind of the lock-in, stand-in, everybody showing up for it. And I don't want to go into too much about it, but I remember that being kind of my first introduction into cynicism, whereas we left and we felt like, okay, this is in the bag, and then it went like the other way of the will of everybody that was in there, and thinking, okay, who owes who has what over somebody's head, what is on the line for some of these. And I remember thinking that, like, there's zero chance that if anybody looked at this with a open and true, like, listening to people want to do the right thing. And again, going back, I was 15.
Yep.
The right thing might have, the right thing was maybe something different. But I just remember thinking, okay, things don't always go the way they're supposed to, I guess. And why do they not go that way? And at that time, it felt like fraud.
Yeah, if that's how it felt. What the reality was, that's certainly how it felt to us. And then there was a civil disobedience, which, at the time didn't feel like that big of a deal. But we actually had, like you said, a sit-in where everybody went to the cafeteria and basically said, we're not going to go to class because we don't want, the shot program cut. And for me, it felt like, well, everybody's trying to stick up for my dad and for me and Kevin. So we felt great. I mean, it made us feel good. I think he had to ask me, or kind of said, no, maybe we shouldn't do this. And so I remember, I don't know if our class went. I know I didn't. I was in the hall. But I do know that a certain administrator had basically said that, if you guys don't go to class, like he said something about calling the sheriff or whatever. And I remember Dad then saying, hey, everybody just go to class. It's okay. Thank you. It's okay. Go to class. And I remember seeing him and everyone went back to class. And that was kind of the end of it. And after that point, we kind of knew. I remember thinking, well, looks like we're not going to be here next year. And again, it was kind of a bummer. But at the same time, if you think of it in the terms of the story of Jonah, he didn't want to go. But God's like, you're going to go. And, if you think of it in those terms, what had to happen to make that happen. It's not like you guys didn't still win a state title. You didn't need me and Kevin to do that, as we mentioned. Though I do wonder what kind of team we might have had in 2001.
That's, again, that's and Darren Football touched on that last week in the episode. We felt that we really could have had a super run, like with you guys. Not only at least one more in football, but we really, really probably should have won at least 2 in basketball.
Yeah, I think you don't get hurt. We stick around because, we're going to talk about it actually next episode.
That's right. Here in a little bit.
Yeah, and we're not going to say that Kevin and I were the reason why St. Joe Christian had good athletes. We had some other good athletes there. So, and we'll talk about them, some great guys. Yeah. But Kevin was a huge part of what we did in basketball as well as football. And I was too. And so it's kind of like, well, I feel like you take us and add to what, you guys had with, with the team you had. And I thought that, at least we would add to depth. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We end up, going the next year to St. Joe Christian. And again, it's a happy ending to the story, Tyler, because I met my wife there, pretty much immediately. And she chased me around for a year, as we mentioned in the love episode, where you kept sticking your foot in your mouth. And I was like, all right, fine, we'll get married, whatever. And so, 6 years later after that, we get married. I got these 4 beautiful children, and I'm back at the school teaching. That's another thing is my life has been kind of centered around and a certain extent, to this school that I never would have gone to if that hadn't happened. Yeah. So again, it's kind of like, and I don't want to go the Joseph route because, I don't think it's quite that extreme, the whole quote of, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, but it did. It worked out, and I'm happy to be here and associated with the school, but, it's interesting to retell the story and remember it. And again, we are ignorant of all the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I would hate for somebody that was on the board at that time to listen to this and think that, there's a beer bagging on this. They don't know what the pressure was under and stuff. Because we don't know all the details, and we give them the benefit of the doubt. But it was hard for us not to notice that there was a new school band the next year. And that's why we make that joke that, there goes the shop program. Again, we're not trying to, pick on anybody, but that's how it felt. That's how it felt.
And it also needs to be, like, Steve and I grew up like brothers. I was very put out that this was happening to you. Would I have been upset about the getting rid of the industrial arts program? Was it not my uncle and my cousins leaving? Absolutely. Would I have been so passionate and inflamed about it? If being honest, probably not. Like, I didn't want you guys to go.
Well, that does it for things that we remember. And as we reached 4th grade in the Steve Juhl Public School attendance history of life, we're just thrilled that we remembered something. Kansas QB is a production of the Juhl Media Podcasting Network. And before we go, we want to thank Tracy of Tracy Lindley Voiceovers for the way too professional audio. And of course, I would like to thank Tyler for clearing time in his busy schedule to talk about The Breakup Part 1.
Hey, and if you like The Breakup Part 1, head on over to Patreon so you can listen to The Breakup Part 2 coming up next.
Well, that does it. Well, that's enough of that. For Tyler, I'm Steve, wishing you big fun in your small town. And you have to wait a second here because now I got to switch back over to the VMix program here and wait, hold it.